Today we'll be looking at the conquest of the Americas by the Europeans, some causes and effects of this conquest. Now, Europeans first arrived with Columbus in 1492, and actually he never reached the United States. He actually reached the Caribbean. So this is where Europeans first make colonies, specifically Cuba, the Bahamas, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico. And their intent is to make colonies where that is land controlled by another. So Spain is controlling these colonies like Cuba. To attract colonists to Cuba, for example, they come up with this idea called encomienda. And it works a lot like feudalism, where a Spaniard comes over and is given a plot of land, and he's basically given as slaves the natives who lived on this land. So it's kind of like serfdom or slavery, but it's pretty brutal, and the overlords were not very kind to the natives. Now, on the mainland are three large, very sophisticated empires: the Maya, the Aztecs, and the Inca. And the Maya, for example, were on the decline at the time, but the Aztecs and Inca were at their height. Now you look at the top left, this is an example of a Mayan city that's emerging from the Yucatan Peninsula's jungle. You can see they had pyramids, even a gridded pattern, and this is what a Mayan city would have looked like, and if you can imagine what it would look like when it was occupied and fully restored. To the right is an Incan city, and the fascinating thing about the Incas is these cities are thousands and thousands of feet up in the Andes Mountains. This city specifically is 14,000 feet in the air. And the bottom is a picture of what the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan would have looked like at its height. Notice the giant pyramids, the streetscape. It was all three of these were very advanced civilizations, on par with ancient Greece and Rome. And in some ways, even at the time, they are more advanced than the Europeans living in Europe. Now, Cortez, he's living in Cuba. He's a Spanish conquistador. He leaves Cuba with 600 men and lands in Mexico because he's heard rumors and legends of the giant empires on the mainland. And conquistadors are just conquerors, and they are seeking gold. And this quote, "a disease of the heart that only gold can cure," sums it up perfectly. They are looking simply for gold. They come into contact with the Aztecs and their emperor Montezuma, who at first believes Cortez is actually a god, but eventually they realize he's not, and Cortez and his small party conquer the Aztecs in 1521. So only 2 years later, they've conquered this massive empire. And there's some reasons for that. And there are four: superior weapons, native allies, a slave girl named Malinche that Cortez acquires, and disease. Cortez, of course, and the Europeans have cannons, muskets, armor, crossbows, and metal. The Aztecs, on the other hand, have obsidian weapons, stone weapons, no armor, no gunpowder. So that's an easy advantage for the Spaniards. The Aztecs are also brutal overlords. They're also very warlike, so their native tribes around them don't like them. The Aztecs basically hunt them for sacrifices. So when Cortez arrives and gives them an option to get rid of the Aztecs, they jump on it. Malinche is a native woman that Cortez acquires, actually from the Maya, and she becomes his translator and helps him form these alliances with the natives who are against the Aztecs. And the biggest advantage of all, which is the main cause for the demise of Native Americans as a population, is European disease, which spreads quickly and decimates the population. This is something called the Columbian Exchange we'll learn about later. Now, after Cortez, another guy, Pizarro, decides to seek fame, and he goes farther south to the Incas. He only has 200 men, but initially they capture Atahualpa, who is the Inca leader, and destroy an army of 30,000, even with only 200 men. They eventually strangle Atahualpa in an execution, and the capital Inca falls shortly without a fight only a year later in 1533. So it's a very quick conquest, and once again, superior weapons and disease play a major part in this. Here is Pizarro and Atahualpa. Now that Spain is pretty much the dominant power in the Americas, Spain is several thousand miles away. It's a 3 to 4 month voyage. They need to build a strong navy to protect their ties to America, specifically from the Portuguese, the French, the English, and the Dutch. So their navy becomes the most powerful in the world at this time. While they're spreading out in Ponce de Leon, he travels from Cuba into Florida and explores. He's looking for the Fountain of Youth, which he never found. In 1540, Coronado explores what's now the southwest U.S., so Texas, northern Mexico, Arizona, and New Mexico. And all the time, along with these conquistadors, are priests. And one goal for exploration was converting people to Christianity, to spread Christianity. So that is why priests travel along with the conquistadors. They are trying to convert the natives. Some side effects of this conquest are encomienda kills off much of the native population, along with disease. Disease mainly more so, but both play together to wipe out the native population in the Caribbean. And what this does, it leaves a labor shortage, and this is the start of bringing in African slaves and the triangle trade. They bring in African slaves because they've wiped out the native population and they need to fill that labor shortage with slave labor. So that is the start of slavery, of the transatlantic slave trade. Now, at the similar time in Brazil, Cabral lands there, and he doesn't find gold, but he does find sugar, and sugar becomes the most profitable commodity in the American colonies. In fact, so much so that 80% of all slaves that are taken out of Africa are taken to Brazil during the slave trade. Thank you for watching.